Okay, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst at Google in Switzerland, and part of what I do is talk with webmasters and publishers like we have here in the audience already. Um, I guess before we get started with a normal Q&A, if one of you has any questions that you've been burning to ask, feel free to jump on in.
So adding sitemaps to the basically adding sitemaps or refreshing them, in other words, would that basically boost the crawl stats? I mean, if the crawl stats are very, very low, so let's say in the hundreds, and all of a sudden I made some changes to, a certain amount of pages on the site, would that boost my, like, because there's a lot of talk out there still that, about this old method. So if I refresh it, would that boost my stats?
Possibly, yeah. So, I guess there are two aspects there. On the one hand, we try to find a maximum crawl speed that makes sense for a server, and we'll try to stick to that. So that's kind of the upper bound we have for a website. That could be the higher limit that you set in Webmaster Tools. It could be a limit that we determine automatically if you don't have anything set in Webmaster Tools. So that's kind of the high limit that we have there. And we usually don't crawl at that high limit all the time. So if we're crawling at 100 pages a day, and we have our limit set to, I don't know, 10,000 pages a day for your site or for your server, then theoretically there's this room for a whole bunch of pages that could be crawled during that day. And if you submit a sitemap and you tell us all these pages just recently changed, then we'll go off and crawl them. So potentially, if there's kind of this room that we have available for crawling more pages, then we'll try to take that into account when we actually do crawl these pages.
And so also moving to an AWS or moving to different, like a cloud, like as opposed to having my own server and moving into a better server, that will also help, right?
Sure. I mean, we kind of set the server limit based on what we think your server can take, and that's kind of based on what we've seen from crawling. So if we crawl, I don't know, 1,000 pages a day and your server does fine. If we crawl 2,000 pages a day and we see a lot of server errors or we see the response time go down significantly, then we'll say, well, there's probably a limit between 1,000 and 2,000 that we shouldn't go past. And if you move to a server that's significantly stronger, where we can crawl a lot more pages, then most likely we'll be able to crawl more pages. The thing to keep in mind there is that just crawling these pages doesn't mean that they'll rank. So we might crawl 10,000 pages from your site on one day, but that doesn't mean that these 10,000 pages are going to be indexed the next day. It doesn't mean that they're going to rank higher than any pages that we crawled maybe a year ago. So just because we crawl them doesn't mean they'll rank better, but we do try to kind of keep up that way, and we say, okay, well, if the webmaster says all of these pages changed yesterday or recently, then we should go and check them out so that when someone is searching for that content, we actually have that content. It's not that it'll rank higher for anything on these pages, but if someone is searching specifically for that content and we don't have it anywhere else, then of course we're going to have to show your pages because that's where this content is.
I see. So I might see a little jump there, like on whatever, on like let's say the 10th being today, and then like 2 days later, it's back to where it was, yeah, like you were saying.
From the crawl speed, I imagine we'll try to kind of smooth that out over time. So we'll try to pick up these pages as soon as we see that they changed, but that usually kind of spreads out a bit. So if you submit a sitemap with 1 million pages and you say these all changed yesterday, then we're not going to be able to crawl all millions of them today.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of spread that out.
Okay. Thank you so much, John.
So John, I have a follow-up there. And we had this bit of a problem because we were trying to figure out what last modified date we should put in the sitemap. So for example, if the CSS changes, if the JavaScript changes on the page, that affects some of the supplementary elements on the page. But not the main content. So, Google's crawler uses the if last modified since header, and so we send the response accordingly. But that depends on whether or not JS and CSS have changed. But on the sitemap, it's different because we can control. We know exactly when the main content changed versus when the CSS and JS changed. So long story short, the question is in the sitemap, the last modified date, should we change it if the JS and CSS change?
If you want that indexed, sure, you can do that. But primarily, we want to see when the main content changes. And that can include things like comments, that can include things like additional news articles or updates that you have on those pages. So these are all kind of in the bulk of the main content. But if you want to have layout changes reflected in the index, then by all means do that as well. So if you do a complete redesign of your website and the internal links change and all of those things change, then by all means let us know about that. We'll try to recognize that automatically as well and kind of pick up on crawling that as well.
Right, yeah, but redesigns don't happen that frequently, right? Normally you'll make smaller changes to CSS. And the thing that I was concerned about was if the last modified date in the sitemap is different from the last modified HTTP header that the page sends. Is that going to be a problem?
Fine. That's fine. Yeah. I mean, we try to recognize if the last modification date in the sitemap makes sense, because what we've seen a lot is that someone will set up a dynamic script to create the sitemap file and say, oh, the last modification date for all of the pages across my website is right now. And that's almost certainly wrong. And that's something that we try to recognize, and we say, well, I think the webmaster is trying to shoot themselves in the foot here. They don't really want us to recrawl the whole website all the time. We have to figure it out ourselves. But if you give us a reasonable last modification date, we'll try to take that into account.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a Dutch football fan club here today.
I don't get that. But
what's up?
I'm curious. Gary from Google, who might be sitting somewhere near you, or maybe not, I don't know if he's back yet, announced or suggests that they're going to announce at Google this week that something's changing with the AJAX recommendations for Google. Can you talk more about that since it was talked about a little bit so far?
I think if he announced that we're going to announce something, then maybe it's best to wait for that announcement. I mean, the bigger picture is, I guess, we've gotten better and better at rendering pages. So it's generally less of an issue that you need to do something like the AJAX crawling workaround to actually make this content accessible to Googlebot. So it's something, if we can render the page directly, then why should you have to go through this kind of magic dance to create this alternate version of your website to kind of serve specifically to Googlebot? So that's kind of like the bigger theme, and that's the direction we've been heading for a while now. So we're getting better and better at rendering JavaScript. We've got it worked out for pretty much most kinds of pages. So I think the next logical step would be to say, well, you don't need this kind of magic workaround anymore. You can just focus on us being able to render those pages directly.
Well, he kind of implied that it's not good user experience to design sites that are fully built in AJAX.
AJAX.
I don't know what he said there specifically, so it's hard to comment on that. I don't know.
So on that,
from a personal point of view,
that if you have a...
Go ahead.
No, I was going to follow up on Barry's question and ask, if you have a search tool with filters, do you guys still recommend using the exclamation mark hashtag to illustrate the URL that Google can go directly? Or are you guys saying that won't even be necessary?
I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to. Like,
so let's say you have a search tool, right? And one of the filters is, I don't know, blue shoes. Mm-hmm. Do you... in the past, you guys recommended that you would use, I believe, exclamation mark has to illustrate. So, for example, let's say example.com/explanation hashtag blue shoes. So then if you went also to the URL example.com/blueshoes, you would get the same thing as if you clicked on that filter.
I think you're probably mixing up the hash ping, the Ajax crawling things there a little bit. So with the Ajax crawling setup, you have the hashtag exclamation mark.
Yes, sorry, I got it the other way around.
Yeah, and the URL we would crawl is then question mark underscore escaped fragment equals whatever you have after the hash ping. And that's essentially the Ajax crawling setup. And for search pages specifically, I think that's independent of any of this Ajax crawling specifically. That's something where you can use the URL parameter settings, those kind of things.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
All right. So I guess we have this first question covered. Let me just click done here. Do you consider it bad to do a 301 redirection of old domain to new website? Old domains have thousands of pages indexed, and there will be not related pages to point on the new website. Can I just 301 the whole domain to the home page of the new URL, or is that bad? If you're moving from one domain to the other, I definitely do a 301 on a per URL basis. If you're essentially just setting up a new domain and it's unrelated to your old domain, then I don't know how a 301 redirect to the home page would realistically make sense there. So that's probably something I'd avoid. If you're essentially moving to a new website and you can't map them one-to-one, then maybe that's a possibility, but for the most part, I'd really try to figure out how the way that you can do a one-to-one mapping of the old pages to new pages. They don't have to be the same URLs, but if you have like a product page for your blue shoes on the old website and a different URL for a product page for blue shoes, and maybe there's a way you can set up some redirect so that users to the old pages can reach the right new ones. And on the one hand, that helps users. On the other hand, it helps us to forward all of the signals that we've collected over the years and bring those to your new pages as well. So as much as possible, I'd really try to set up a really one-to-one redirect there and not redirect everything to the home page. I have an old site not updated for years, which is a tutorial directory, and I have thousands of pages indexed in Google. I want to rerun that site on a new script and delete all the old content. What should I do with all the old indexed pages? Should I 410 them? It's hard to say exactly what you're trying to do there. So if you have a lot of content in a CMS and you want to move to a different CMS, then I try to, like in the previous question, set up redirects from the old versions to the new ones. That really helps us to kind of keep that connection and make sure that all the signals that we have collected for the old pages, for the content that you have there, is forwarded to the new content. On the other hand, if you want to delete your whole website and essentially start over, and you don't want to keep any of the old content, then putting a 404 or 410 there for those URLs is perfectly fine, and that's essentially up to you. If 410 will be a tiny bit faster, but for practical purposes, a 404 is just as useful.
Hey, John, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So is there a difference between payday loans and Penguin? Because you guys refer to them both as the web spam algorithm. I was wondering if there was a difference. And are you still updating payday loans? How do you fix payday loans? What is the deal with payday loans?
I don't know. What do you guys do with these payday loans websites that our web spam engineers have to kind of focus specifically on that niche? That sounds like something is really going wrong there. I don't know what's up with payday loans, so I don't have any specific answer. It is different than like our other algorithms like Penguin, for example. But I don't know what the specific issues are there that the website team is saying this is such a complicated and specific problem that we have to focus on this specifically.
So you don't even know if it's still being updated?
I don't know. I can't speak for them. I don't know. I'd have to kind of check it out and see what's happening there. Is this something that you're seeing with specific sites?
Well, we are seeing fluctuations, and Google and Barry does his due diligence and asks Google if it was Panda or Penguin, and they say nope, it wasn't Panda or Penguin. And so some sites that went down on a previous admitted payday loans date either go up on this date or go down on this date of the unnamed update. And so, we're just trying to diagnose what's going on and just trying to fix websites and get people back into the rankings.
As far as I know, the payday loan specific algorithms are really specific to those type of sites, though. So that's not something where if you have a site about shoes or an e-commerce website, you'd have any problems with anything payday loan specific. So that would be something different.
Okay. Well, the issue there then is that, on the admitted payday loans date that Google had confirmed, Barry had asked, and Google confirmed this is a payday loans update back in 2013, I think. Various sites that were not in any payday loans niche, I would say they're probably in competitive niches, I would admit that. But various sites, like limousine sites, car rental sites, for example, I've had numerous clients come to me, and they went down on those dates. So either they were hit by payday loans, or maybe Penguin was dropped in back there, or some other algorithm. Would you guys ever put payday loans and Penguin at the same time, maybe?
It's theoretically possible. We make a lot of updates over the years, so that's something. On the one hand, if it's back in 2013, it's really hard to say what would be affecting the site now that happened back then.
Right.
But in general, I don't know. Last year we made over 1,000 changes in web search. So
1,000.
1,000.
I think we said that somewhere. Yeah. But that's something where on any given date there might be larger changes, something that we might talk about even, and there might be a lot of other changes that are happening that are just happening as they usually happen. And there might be things that the website team is doing manually at the same time as well. So that's something where just because something happened on a date, I think there's some help where you can kind of look up and see, okay, well, these kind of things happened on that date, so it might be that. But I wouldn't assume that just because it happened on that date, it has to be that. But I think you've seen a lot of these cases as well, and you kind of understand that too, right?
Are we going to see less fluctuations this year for 2015 as opposed to last year? Because last year there was just wanted to know.
I have no idea.
No idea.
I don't think like the search quality team is sitting there scheming and saying, well, we'll make lots of fluctuations this year and keep people on their toes. We're just trying to keep the search results relevant. And sometimes that means we kind of roll out bigger changes that we've worked on for maybe a year, maybe even longer, and maybe those make bigger fluctuations, but it's not the case that the team is explicitly focusing on fluctuations and saying this is something we should do more of or less of.
Okay.
Well, I just want to finish up on that, John. So I understand completely what you're saying, and of course we don't want complete transparency, but quite frankly, pretty much the only way we could diagnose whether or not a site has been hit by Penguin or Panda or Payday Loans or any other named algorithm is by looking in the traffic and looking at the ranking reports and seeing if they fell on a confirmed date or they fell when a bunch of other people fell, and then we can presume possibly it's Panda, which as far as we know, although Barry's about to ask you a question about that, as far as we know, Panda updates roughly monthly on a regular unannounced basis. And so if a bunch of people are hit at the same time, we can predict that maybe it was Panda. But if quite frankly, if the ability to diagnose that is removed from us, that really is a bad thing, and we can't diagnose what has hit a site. And it's not a trivial change, John. It's thousands of dollars to go clean up a backlink profile, and it's a different set of $1,000 to go make a site much higher quality And for a lot of businesses, that's not a trivial difference. I'm sure you can appreciate that. Some businesses, yeah, they have lots of money and they can improve their site and they can clean up their backlink profile. But many businesses don't. So I don't want to be the broken ethics wheel, but quite frankly, shame on Google if that's what you guys are doing. We need announcements. You don't have to tell us exactly how it works, but we do need announcements for these things so we can diagnose. At least if it's a quality issue, fine, we can go fix that. Or if it's a link issue, fine, we can go fix that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I don't know how much of that we can bring out, but it's definitely something that we bring up with the teams when we discuss with them. And I think there are various levels of information that we could give in that regard. I don't know how far they'd be willing to go, how far they'd be willing to go with regards to changes that they feel are pretty major that maybe nobody noticed.
Right. So, sorry, the very last question on that then. So, again, is Penguin running on a monthly schedule now, unannounced, or is it still going to be announced when it refreshes?
At the moment, I don't think it's on a monthly schedule. So we're trying to get that more regular, but at the moment, it's not something that's rolling out automatically.
Okay, thanks very much.
John, I have been trying to diagnose an issue like this. An example is on February 22nd, we noticed that the traffic that Google sent on the mobile site dropped by about 40–45%. And the desktop and tablet versions are unaffected. And I don't know how to diagnose this because every single thing that I do in terms of, the vary headers are set, Google's tools say that it is mobile friendly. I haven't made any changes on the mobile side. And this is a significant issue because I used to get about 100,000 people a day on mobile, and now it's down significantly. So what can we do to diagnose that issue? Because nothing seems to have changed.
That sounds mostly like a technical issue on your side. I'd have to take a look at the specific URLs to kind of see what exactly is happening there. But in general, we currently have very minimal kind of differences in the mobile search results, so the smartphone search results, I assume you mean, and the desktop search results. So we watch out for things like if you have broken redirects, like end-to-one redirects, if you have bad error pages on mobile, if you have Flash on mobile, those are things that we watch out for. It sounds like you already have a pretty good mobile site.
Yeah, it's the same URL. We don't even redirect. And so if you were to take a look, how can we contact you? Can you publish your email address?
I'd post in the help forum, and feel free to kind of post the URL of your thread in the event listing, and I'll take a look there.
Okay, thank you.
But generally speaking, since we don't differentiate from the ranking side of things that strongly at the moment between the desktop and the mobile pages, if you're seeing a significant drop in the mobile pages, then it sounds like something more on your side is going wrong than something on our side has changed. But I'm happy to take a look. I think in the future, as we roll out the mobile ranking changes, where we are going to kind of take a stronger approach to recognizing mobile-friendly pages and non-mobile-friendly pages, you will see a stronger difference between the desktop and the mobile versions. But at the moment, it should be fairly equivalent, besides the exceptions that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
I got one question about Panda. Gary mentioned that Panda is constantly running in real time. I wasn't at the session. I couldn't really ask him more questions about that, but as far as I know, and based on what I'm tracking, there might have been some Panda rumblings in the past week or so, maybe a little bit of testing, but before that, I haven't seen any significant Panda changes since October 24th. As far as you know, could you tell us a little bit about this real-time, instant, constant remark? Is it constantly running? What's the story with that? It used to run every month, but I think you guys stopped that at some point.
I'm not exactly sure what he was referring to with the real-time stuff there, so I don't have any specific comment on that. I'd have to check in with him to see what he was talking about there. But as far as I know, we do kind of have Panda tied into our search results more directly, so there's this kind of real-time reflection there. But as far as I know, we haven't updated the data that's reflected there for a while. So that's probably the date that you're looking at there, and the real-time is more the technical aspect of how we integrate that into.
Are you guessing that that's the date, John, or do you know for a fact that it's October 24th? Because it's funny that my customer's site is in the same situation, and that's the exact date where they fell off a cliff.
I don't know for sure the exact date. I know it was in October. So
last time they refreshed the data was in October.
So I mean Barry watches these like a hawk, so he would know which date it is. I'd have to dig through a big pile of email to find something.
But just to confirm, they haven't refreshed this data since sometime in October, as far as
I know, it's not refreshed yet.
Thank you.
Hey, John, since we are on the Panda issue, so I know in the past you have said that comments you are considered as part of the page, and you guys consider them. If let's use Barry's website as an example, which has usually thinner articles but a lot of conversation happening. Can it be the case where if there is a lot of comments, yeah, not thin content, just fewer, maybe 500-word articles. Sorry, Barry. So can it be the case where if a site has a lot of comments, then potentially Panda might get confused and think that a lot of different articles are looking alike because maybe the comments are not differentiating themselves, like people are not using the keyword, like the article topic as much as you know, it's used in the body of the article, and then you are inadvertently penalizing sites that you should be rewarding because they're having a lot of community conversation and an engaged community versus you know, a different website might have a slightly longer article and no one bothers to comment on.
I don't think that's the case. So we do look at the whole page and the whole website in general when we look at the quality of a site. So that does include things like the comments, but I don't think it's the case that if you have like a lot of people who comment in the same or similar way, that would significantly pull down the quality of your pages. I imagine if you have the issue that a lot of people are commenting exactly the same way across all of your articles, then that's probably a general lower quality sign anyway. But something that you'd want to look at kind of as a webmaster and think about, like, why are all these people saying exactly the same thing on all of these pages? Are these like real people, or are these bots trying to drop links, or what's really happening there? Because usually if people are commenting on something, they have something unique to say, and they're not just going to say, well, I liked your article, thank you for posting it, please link to my website. They're going to say something unique, right?
No, absolutely. Just my concern is that the conversation that happens may not be strong enough for a bot to recognize the differences. I think for a human, it's definitely, but maybe the conversation's happening, and if there is, you know, most of the content on a page comes from comments. So let's say 70% comes from comments versus the rest of the article, because you have, again, a very active conversation, that maybe a bot cannot say, oh, what is this page about? I can see the title of the page, but I cannot tell what this page is really about versus the next page versus the next page.
Well,
and then you might be having a false positive.
I think if we look at the whole page overall and we really have trouble at recognizing what this page is about, then maybe these comments are kind of off-topic, but even off-topic comments can provide a value for some sites. So it's not the case that I'd say if you have kind of like shorter articles and a lot of comments, that's a bad thing. I'd really kind of look at things overall and say, well, overall, this page provides a lot of value. Some of it is on top here, and some of it is on the bottom here with a lot of user-generated content. And overall, this is something that provides value that we'd like to show in search. So that's something that we kind of try to reflect there. And it's not the case that we'd say, well, there are 500 comments on this page, and the actual article is only 5 lines, therefore this page is lower quality. There's actually a lot of content there if there's so many comments. So that's not something where I kind of take the number of comments to lines of actual body article into account. So that's essentially something we look at the overall page and try to recognize what that's about, not just focusing on one or the other elements.
Thank you.
All right, let's run through some of the questions that were submitted. Google mobile ranking, are we going to see something like a page layout algorithm for mobile due to small screen sizes? 1/4 to 1/3 is covered with ads. Is that a problem? I don't know. That's kind of forward-looking. I would love to be in a situation where we can say all websites work great on smartphones, and now we can focus on making sure that they look even better on smartphones and don't just show ads on smartphones. So I think maybe at some point in the future, but not anytime soon. If an article is copy and pasted on multiple geodomains, if we implement hreflang markup, do the canonicals need to be pointed at the country subdomains that publish it first? You could do that if you wanted to. You don't necessarily need to do that. So if you're using the hreflang markup, then I would do the canonical to each of the hreflang implementations of that. If you're not using the hreflang markup and you just want to publish this on multiple pages, but actually prefer to have one version indexed, then definitely use the canonical and just point to that version. Then you don't need to do the hreflang in addition, because we kind of drop the hreflang information if you have a canonical set up to a specific version. I'm trying to recover my site from Panda, but then did not see any Panda refresh updates since October. It's very frustrating. Can you give us some clue about the next update? We talked about this briefly. I don't have any update on when the next updates will happen, but we've been talking to the teams here as well to kind of see what we can say or encourage things to move along a little bit faster.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have over 100,000 pages added by users. 90% of the pages have thin content and a lot of duplicate content. I'm thinking of adding no index, no follow to those pages. I'm scared. Of course, 50% of my search engine traffic goes there. What should I do? This is something that's really hard to say on a very generic level. So if you have a lot of user-generated content and you know that it's lower quality content and you don't want to be associated with that, then that's something you might want to take action on and see what you can do to either improve that content, which might be an option, or to remove the content that's lower quality, like for the meantime, and improve on it step by step, or think about what you can fold together, all of those things. So essentially, that's something where it depends on your website, on what you want to do, how far you want to go. But if you're able to recognize that a lot of your content is lower quality content, then I think that's an important first step. And from there are a few options open that you can use to kind of treat that. A few months back, how your website is linked started to show some unusual set of links, more than 3,000 at once. I got to know that someone has used my spam link bot towards my website. I dissolved most of the domains, or disavowed probably most of the domains, but my rankings were dropping. In general, if you use a disavow tool for that, that's the perfect way to handle that. You can disavow it on a domain level, which means you don't have to focus on the individual URLs. You just compile the domains and submit it like that. If your ranking is still dropping there, then chances are that's completely unrelated to that. Because on the one hand, we do try to recognize this kind of spammy link behavior automatically, and we essentially try to ignore it. Using the disavow tool, make sure that we can drop it. But this isn't something that generally would be negatively affecting your website.
On the mobile level, John, just a quick question. On the mobile level, you were just discussing, is there, now that the Google Mobile usability shows up, like it updates whatever every 2-3 weeks, now that it's a ranking factor, can we mark it as fixed soon, like the errors and stuff? Will you make it, is it possible that the feature will change?
Um,
Marking it as fixed as opposed to waiting 2, 3, you know.
I think we have something around marked as fixed plan, but I don't think it's for the mobile usability feature.
I see.
But in general, the marked as fixed in crawl errors, for example, is essentially just for the UI to make it easier for you. It doesn't change anything on our side. So it doesn't result in us recrawling those URLs or reindexing them. It's essentially you just saying, I looked at these, I don't want to look at them anymore, show me the next batch.
Okay.
By the way, related to that, I was in the Hangouts last week regarding mobile websites, and I found out that the ranking factor will be applied in a binary way. So if the website passes the mobile-friendly test, then it will get the boost or whatever it gets to rank higher. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So it's not about just a few issues being fixed. The whole test needs to show the green light in order to get the full benefit. So not parts of it or partially.
My issue is the problem here is that if there's 200 pages that are not mobile friendly, I don't want to go through the same ones over. I'll mark it as fixed, and then you know, I would get whatever, like, okay, you got 30 left, 20 left, whatever. Supposed to going, you know, having the Excel on this, you know, screen, and I just.
Yeah, that's good feedback. I'll see what we can do there. I don't know if we can implement something like that, like really quickly, but I think that seems like something that might make sense there. And in general, what will happen is we'll recrawl those pages and we'll kind of drop them out automatically. But I can see how you might want to kind of let us know about that a little bit earlier so that we can recrawl them a little bit earlier so that you don't have to see them in the search in the chart and the aggregations there that much. Yeah.
We can still use fetch and render and then submit to index, I guess.
Yeah, you can do that, but that mostly works if you have a handful of pages, and if you're changing a lot of pages, it might make more sense to just say, select all of these in this chart and like mark them all as fixed. But yeah.
Hey, John, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Okay.
So again, some people are taking. There will be a debate later on Barry's site filled with internet trolls and vitriol. So I just want to make sure we get this clear. Some people are taking your last comment about Panda, that the code hasn't been updated since October 24th when Panda 4.1 was released, as to say that Panda itself has not run monthly since October. Can you confirm if that is the case, or are you just not sure?
Whoa, wait, before you confirm, specifically, the code might not have been updated. The data, in terms of the signals you're pulling from websites, also have not been updated since October. So you might be rerunning it monthly with the same old data. That's how I understood it.
Well, why would they do that?
I don't know. They like to run things.
That's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
Whatever. Go ahead, John.
I don't know where you get this level of detail from us.
Well, can I ask it in a different...
As far as I know, we haven't updated the data. And that's... I mean, we've updated the way that we're pulling in this data, but it might be that's something that you don't really see directly.
So when you say data, you mean code, right? You haven't updated the code since October, but you're still refreshing it on a regular basis. It's still running. Panda is still running.
What don't you understand? Data is not code. Data is data.
Data can be code.
Can I ask the question a different way?
Okay.
Please.
So my site was hit on my customer's site was hit on October 24th and fell off a cliff, and we believe it was Panda, and we've turned that website upside down. We took a machete to it, wiped out anything that could be perceived as low quality content, and added a ton of new content, and have not seen any recovery. Would that be the expected result based on what Google's done with Panda, or is it possible that we're still waiting for, let's say, a data update for that site to fully recover?
In general, if you make bigger changes on your website, you'll see kind of this gradual change over time anyway, but you'll probably see the bigger jump once we've actually updated that data. But it really depends on what all is happening with your website. And there might be some issues there that are totally unrelated to kind of like what our quality algorithms were picking up there. But if this is like in a theoretical case only due to like our quality algorithm thinking that this site overall is kind of lower quality and not as good as it used to be, or compared to other sites maybe not as good as it could be, then that's something that will be changed when this data is actually updated.
So, John, I'm sorry. So you're saying Panda has not run since October 24th, to your knowledge?
As far as I know, I mean, I don't know the specific date. I'd have to look it up. But as far as I know, it's been a while, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So John Mueller is not sure. Barry?
I don't really have time to dig through my emails during these live hangouts.
He said it hasn't been a while. What's so confusing? The data has not been updated. The code doesn't exist in the code. Sites that have been hit by Panda back sometime in October, November, if you want to go that far, will not see a recovery specifically around Panda since then. That's simple.
I mean, when you're doing significant changes on your website, you'll see kind of these gradual uptakes happening over time anyway. As users kind of love your website more, as they share it more, as they kind of go back by themselves more, you'll see this kind of gradual growth anyway. So that's something you should be seeing in any case, regardless of anything happening around things like Panda. But in general, like the bigger jump, you'll probably see when that actually is updated and when our algorithms are able to confirm that, yes, this old evaluation of your website might not be relevant anymore.
Okay, I think it's pretty crystal clear.
So the Panda code is no longer in effect, and Panda is not affecting websites?
Oh, God. No. Let's move on.
Let's move on with some other questions here. Yeah. I think we should do maybe like one specific to Panda and just focus on all these questions, but
complete it with Ghetto.
Maybe I should have a chance to actually prepare for that.
That would be very therapeutic.
And dress as Panda.
Hey, John. Moving on to a different topic. So for videos, you're currently only showing snippets on the search results for YouTube. Any updates in regards to potentially changing that? And would you mind sharing the rationale behind that? It seems to me that you would want to show video snippets for any site that ranks high for that term.
We do. Yeah, I mean, we do show video snippets for essentially any site that we recognize as having video content. So if you use something like video sitemaps, and we can recognize that this video is on those pages, you have the play pages defined properly, marked up, then we will try to show that. So that's something that's unrelated to just YouTube or not YouTube.
I thought that you had stopped showing on the search results the video snippet for non-YouTube results. Am I mistaken?
No, it's not there anymore. From what I just see now, just strictly YouTube results only.
So when I search for something like Vimeo skateboard, I see Vimeo sites. So I don't know. At least for me, it's still working. I don't know. Is this like something you've seen in search results in general? Because maybe something, I don't know, got stuck. Because as far as I know, this should be working with all kinds of video sites.
No, John, I mean, I'm using something like Witsia, and then in Witsia you have an option for the snippet to show. There was also a blog on that. It's not showing no longer in sites, right? So like apple.abc.com or whatever, slash whatever, it doesn't show. But regular like YouTube or Vimeo results, yeah, you'll see it. You'll see the snippet if it's just, but not on like just regular sites.
I mean, what we try to do is recognize if the video is really an important element on this page and treat them appropriately. Because if you're in video search and you search for a type of video and you land on a page where the video is actually like in the sidebar and it's like thumbnail size, then that's kind of a bad user experience. Whereas if you go to a normal landing page where the video is kind of in front, then that's kind of a thing we'd like to show. And that's similar for image search, for example. So if you're searching for an image on something, and we know this is on the page somewhere, but it's actually like a really sub element, then maybe that's something we wouldn't show directly. But that's
John, I just pasted the URL where the only video snippets are on YouTube, at least on my end, and there are other videos on the search results, but they don't get the video snippet.
I imagine that just depends on like what we have there. So like I don't know, when I search that, in the bottom result I have from Dailymotion, which has a video snippet.
If Michael Jackson had a YouTube video on his homepage, and there was a YouTube on top of him, just a YouTube snippet would show. The Michael Jackson website would not show.
I don't know. I haven't seen Michael Jackson's website.
It just disappeared. It disappeared last year sometime. I can't remember the date, but I can.
Yeah. I think this is something that we've always been kind of trying to optimize, in the sense that we're trying to make sure that we don't overload the user with like additional information that's essentially the same, but try to recognize which parts are relevant and which parts are irrelevant on the page. So that's something where maybe this is kind of playing into that. I'd have to take a look at specific queries to really see what exactly you're seeing there. And maybe there's, I don't know, some bug on our side that we're kind of like skipping over video markup on pages that we actually should be recognizing properly.
Okay, thank you, John.
My question about the change of address tool, why is there no option to move subdomain to new domain? That's a good question. We've been talking about that to the Webmaster Tools team about that as well. And it's possible that we can get an update there. So hopefully that'll be possible at some point. In Webmaster Tools, could you stop listing, giving warnings about 404 errors that come from obvious spam and scraper sources? That's good feedback. I don't think that we can just block that out completely at the moment, but that's something we can definitely take a look at and see what we can do there. I don't know if you submitted that to the wish list that we sent out a while back. I'll definitely copy it onto the side so that I have that for later too. Okay, we just have a few minutes left, but since you guys have been asking so many live questions, let me grab a bunch from the Q&A. Can Google really reproduce a JavaScript rendered page without the escape fragment? And how much of a trust decrease is there with the escape fragment? You can test this in Webmaster Tools with the Fetches Render tool to kind of see exactly what Googlebot will be able to see. In most of the cases that I've seen, we can get it pretty much right. Or we can point at things like JavaScript or CSS files that are blocked by robots text. And usually that's the biggest issue that we've run across, where we could actually render the page properly, but because you're blocking your JavaScript or your CSS from being crawled by Googlebot, we can't actually do it. So this is something that's also very relevant for mobile pages, where actually we'd like to be able to recognize that they're mobile friendly, but if you're blocking us from being able to see them as such, then we can't really recognize them as such. And there's no trust decrease or anything if you're using escaped fragment or not. Essentially, we're trying to just see what these pages look like to the normal user. With the announcement of facts being included as a ranking factor, how will Google handle incorrect information online? Because obviously there's nothing incorrect online. This was, I think, just a research paper that some of our researchers did, and not something that we're using in our ranking signals. So I
John, that
think,
really hurt me there, you know?
yeah, I mean, we have researchers that do fantastic research that publish tons of papers all the time, and just because they're researching something and trying to see which options are happening there, or because maybe they even patent something or create new algorithms, doesn't mean that it's something that we use in search. So at the moment, this is a research paper, and I think it's interesting seeing the feedback around that paper and kind of the feedback from the online community, from the people who are creating web pages, from the SEOs who are kind of working on promoting these pages, but also from normal web users who are looking at this and saying, well, I don't know how good Google do this, or maybe this would be good, or maybe this would be bad. But at the moment, this is definitely just a research paper and not something that we're actually including in our search results.
Or feedback. It's a feedback paper.
A feedback paper.
It's just basically just kind of feedback, and somebody, I mean, is it ever going to happen? But from what you're saying,
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if we can recognize what is right and what is wrong on the internet, that has to be some pretty advanced artificial intelligence. I don't know how that could work. But I totally installed that on my phone. It's like if you have like a red light, green light, this website is telling the truth or is trying to trick you. I don't know. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So Google doesn't know.
I guess it depends who programs it.
All right. What was that?
Josh.
Who goes first?
I said, I guess it depends who programs it.
Well, if it like knows exactly like the facts, you know, the facts don't depend on who programmed it, right? I guess opinions are a bit different, but I mean, it makes it interesting. Like you can ask Google who killed JFK, and you'll get some answers, and you'll get a variety of answers, but it's not like there's this one proven thing that is absolutely correct. I mean, maybe there is in the meantime. I haven't been paying attention to that, but these are the types of questions where there's naturally some disagreement, and it's important for us to bring the various viewpoints into the search results and not just say, well, like some of these people are saying this, but these other people who think that maybe it's not the case, we shouldn't show them.
Did Uri Geller really bend the spoon? Yes or no?
Well, depends on how you mean how he did it. You know?
All right.
All right. I have to run a bit early. So if you have one really short question without an echo, then I'll grab that. But otherwise, I have to head out a little bit.
Quick one, John.
Okay.
Regarding Google Hummingbird, to change gears a bit, have there been any significant improvements over the past 2 years, and whether Hummingbird equally applies to international languages as well? Or since it's based on topicality and semantics, for some languages it might not provide the same effect as for the English language?
I don't know. So the original version was definitely international, but I don't know how like changes over time have affected that. And I know we do work on understanding languages better, so that's possible that that kind of flows into that, but I don't know specifically around the Hummingbird changes how our changes of understanding of language have kind of flown back into that as well.
Right, but we do expect that for international languages, it would have a lesser effect than for the English language, where you have a better understanding of the semantics, relationships between words, and everything.
I don't know. Yeah, possibly. I know sometimes we're able to handle individual languages a little bit better than others. And sometimes that's frustrating if you're in one of those languages that we don't pick up on so well. But I don't know how that kind of worked in there.
Okay. Maybe we can have a panda hangout and then have a hummingbird hangout.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not to make more work for you, John.
Yeah, okay. All right, but I have to head out. Thank you all for your questions. And maybe see you guys again in one of the future hangouts.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good, John.
Thanks,
Bye,
John.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.